the smartest people I know. Literally a person that has unclouded Ethereum for me specifically, and somewhat the blockchain is Charles Allen. Charles Allen is the Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of the Board of BTCS. Their stock symbol is BTCS.
Look at that.
And I think you're going to be hearing a lot more of him because we're going to start covering this company. But there's, the long story short is Ethereum matters, and I want him to go through again because he offers at BTCS blockchain technology consensus solution, which is basically a financial model that could literally obliterate fraud.
I like it so far.
Obliterate broker fees and save us all money and make us more. Charles? Am I touting you well enough there? Does that sound about right?
Look, I appreciate the compliments. I'm a firm believer in blockchain technology, and I think if you look at all the things that goes wrong in the market, whether that's the stock market, the real estate market, it's just time for change. A great example is phantom shares with stocks. If you've ever bought a house, the fact that you need to go get insurance, title insurance,
yes,
because people can't keep correct records. Our whole intermediary-based society is somewhat flawed in how we do things. And I think the technology finally exists to allow us to be so much more efficient. And Ethereum is one of the technologies that allows that to happen. And so I think, maybe that's just a too broad and vague way of putting it, but I think it's probably one of the most transformative technologies we're going to see, at least in my lifetime. That AI, obviously the internet was big 25 years ago, but it's really remarkable what it can do.
Charles, how much does adaptability speed up the process or conversely slow down the process of more and more people, I guess, getting comfortable?
The adoption rate?
The adoption rate with where we are going as a society, especially in finance?
Well, I think the interesting thing about society is people are very slow to make changes. I'm guilty of that. If I look at my late mother, she still balanced a paper checkbook. Right?
Listen, I had that conversation yesterday with my mother's ATM card, and she still thinks it's Satan. So,
it's generational. Like I think I'm on the kind of the forefront for my age bracket. You look at the younger generation, and they don't know how to write checks.
No.
They barely carry any money. It's Apple Pay and it's other things. So, I think it just takes time to change human behavior. For adoption of blockchain technology, the key is really it's going to be regulatory change, because for the average consumer to know something changed, like that's not how it works. Like,
sure.
They just want things to work better and not know how. I order an Uber. I don't care how it works. I test drove a Tesla the other day, and it drove me home. I really didn't touch the wheel or the brakes.
Yeah.
Went through stoplights and all this stuff. I don't care how it works. It was remarkable.
How late at night was that, Charles, and where were you coming from?
I was actually blown away. I had an hour off on a Saturday that I didn't have the kids and the family, and I scheduled it online. I didn't have to call. I showed up. My phone was the key, and I just pushed take me home, and it drove me home. I said take me to the micro center, and it took me there and parked in the parking lot.
Well, let's talk about the regulatory thing you just talked about, because I think when digital currency, and again, I always say, Bitcoin is just another Dow, Nasdaq, and it's an index as far as I'm concerned, in terms of thinking about usefulness. It's an investment for me. But in terms of Ethereum specifically, and digital currency as currency, I think you're spot on, because one of the big issues was, as much as we all hate overregulation, no regulation is very scary when it comes to currency, correct? And I think you're absolutely right. This is exactly what it's going to take for more adoption.
Well, you nailed it. And I think, I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent there with an example, but that's why I really love Ethereum over, Bitcoin and other things. It actually does something. Like, you have the opportunity to own a piece of technology that a whole ecosystem is built on top of. Bitcoin doesn't do that. It's a store of value. It's an asset class. Ethereum's a whole digital economy, and you can own that. If I told you could own a piece of the internet in 2000, and you didn't have to bet on pets.com, you didn't have to bet on what would be the surviving company, you could just own a piece. That's kind of what you can do with Ethereum. And I think that's really remarkable.
I believe so. Can I talk to you about digital asset treasuries? I was talking to my person about that, and it seems to me there's some smoke and mirrors going there, in my opinion. And I think you mentioned before about window dressing for crypto. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, so I think what really happened was, and this is the summer of 2025, summer last year, all these companies came public. They merged into small biotech companies, and they basically put billions of dollars on the balance sheet of otherwise zombie companies, but they had no business model. The business was, well, we're going to buy some Bitcoin, it's going to go up, and the pipe investors that backed it are going to go dump on retail, and it was kind of a bad model. We weren't in that. We'd been public well before that, working on building a business with growing revenue. And so now the market's kind of soured on that. And really what happened is you've got a lot of smart hedge funds that said, hey, it's a great pair trade. I can short the DAT and I can buy the underlying ETF that holds the Ethereum, whatever the token is, the Bitcoin, and bam, all of a sudden I have a risk-free trade, and I'm gonna squeeze this thing till I make money. And so for most of the DATs, and I know a lot of the CEOs of other DATs, is they're looking for, what is my operating company? How am I going to drive revenue? How am I going to get to be a profitable company apart from just holding a token that someone could otherwise go buy?
Yeah.
And I think that's the things you see in the market. There are all these companies. If you don't do anything beyond holding a token, like, I can just go buy it myself. Now, I know that's hard if it's a IRA account, or you're not crypto savvy, or you don't want to open a Coinbase account, but you could go buy the ETF. And so I think what you're really seeing is a lot of these DATs struggling right now to say, well, what is our business? What's our value proposition?
Sure.
Why should shareholders own our company versus just buying an underlying ETF that holds the crypto, or buying the crypto itself? And that's what our company focuses on, is providing a huge value proposition beyond just having a treasury.
Charles, I'll tell you, I can't wait to cover this more as we move forward. Obviously, Ethereum matters, and I think what the piece of this, on top of regulation, is getting people to really understand how that transition is going to take place over the next 5 years or so, if that long. I don't think it's going to take long. Thanks so much, buddy. We'll talk to you next time.
Charles Allen, CEO, Chairman of the Board, BTCS Incorporated, ticker symbol BTCS.